Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Happy, Season 1, Episode 1, Saint Nick. And things just kick off with this show. It's just like a booster rocket burning full bore from essentially frame 1. Cut to, like, happy Christmas music, jingle bells. We get through half a verse of that, instantly interrupted by bloody urine on some ice in a urinal. Yowza. Okay? Just like a kick in the teeth, in case you weren't paying attention when you tuned in. You're like, was it A Wonderful Life, honey, that was going to be on Syfy at this time? Oh, no. No, it's not going to be It's a Wonderful Life, okay? Because that wouldn't make any sense. But anyway, This is just grabbing you by the throat instantly, both thematically, visually, and character-wise. Because the very next thing we see is this guy who has peed blood into the toilet looking in the mirror. He's very haggard, all right? He's clearly seen better days. Take a gun out, point it at his chin, and then, like, kaleidoscope suicide? Those are the words I wrote down here because I was halfway reminded of some of the stuff that I saw in the X-Men series Legion from earlier this year. How that you would just bounce into some weird musical alternate, maybe it's really happening, maybe it's not, who can tell kind of thing, where there's disco ball lights going all over the place. There's go-go dancers. Like, the blood is sort of spewing out of his head in slow motion. And as he shakes it around, it just sort of sloshes out. It was bonkers, okay? From a visual standpoint and from just like hey, we're probably different from the last thing you were watching. I don't know what that was, but let's just roll the bones and say this is probably a little bit of a different flavor than that. And it's also, I think, a really smart introduction to this character. You essentially know everything you need to know about the core of who this guy is. He's just hit rock bottom. He's given up, but not quite. Like, his brain won't let him let go, in some sense. He still has to atone for something. So here he is, soldiering on. It's a fake out, right? He doesn't actually commit suicide. And he goes out in the bar. He has some snarky back and forth with the bartender and one of the patrons. And this is Nick, of the Saint Nick of the title, right? I love that irony that he's not really a saint, guys. I know that that's really obvious and on the nose, but it's still, I think, a beautiful look into who this guy is. And to top this scene off, he gets some pictures from a guy on a motorcycle. We don't get a lot of details on who this guy is or exactly why Nick is interacting with him, but that's elaborated on a little bit later. Meanwhile, we meet one of the other main characters, I would assume anyway, a little girl who's going to something called the Wishies concert. Kind of like Teletubbies is what these guys are, although, like, clearly, like, a little bit too on the nose with the disturbingness of these characters. Like, they're farting rainbows into each other's butts, like, multiple times on the screen. That seems, that maybe that's a real thing that happened in Teletubbies, or maybe they're just mocking it. I mean, it's that kind of show. For me, it was just like, yep, okay, I get what you're doing there, movie, TV show, whatever we're talking about. Like, I get it. Yes, the kids think it's great, but it's really kind of weird. And she's with her mom, right? And she's talking to somebody who's not there, which is our first introduction to Happy. We don't hear anything from Happy at this point, but we get a little glimpse of the idea that this is this little girl's imaginary friend. And in the process of being at this concert, she's short because she's a child person, all right, can't see over the people, so she decides she's going to run to the front of the line, and in trying to get to the front of the line, ends up kind of off to the side somewhere in some park where you can kind of still see the stuff going on, but she's a little bit off on her own. And wouldn't you know it, gets taken by I don't know what you want to call this guy. I mean, he's Santa Claus, but like if he got fed through a wood chipper and then you decided to just drape some holiday stuff on top of him. What is this guy's deal? Visually he's cool, but there's a part of my brain that like asks, did he get up in the morning and dress himself like that? Did he look at the dirty Santa suit and say, you know what, this isn't going to draw in the kids. What I need to do is hang ratty tinsel on myself, and this will no doubt complete the illusion that I'm a nice and good Santa. I don't know, okay? That was just a question that came to my mind during the episode. But he kidnaps this little girl, takes her to a warehouse, and puts her in a box. Meanwhile, Nick is, well, this was a little bit of an incongruous scene, but again, I think in this show we're going to have to just roll with it. We see a guy in a big shrimp costume, or prawn, meeting up with the prostitute. He's about to kill her with a hammer after he gets his jollies, but Nick shows up and kills him. I don't, like, as we understand this episode, this is not part of Nick's plan necessarily. Like, he needs to be here, but he doesn't, like, I don't think he knows that this guy is going to kill this lady. It seems like unlikely that he would be able to plan all of that out, that A, this woman would have a murderous John, and B, also, like, he could let the guys know that he was going to be there as he was killing the murderous John. I think it's just good luck that he happens to be here to save her life. But whatever. It's a dude in a giant crab costume, you know, having sexual favors performed for him by a prostitute in an angel costume. And that is something visually very weird. And especially later on, as the lady with the angel costume has blood all over her. I just, there's something very compelling about that, about the idea of all these things, really, of these people dressing up like a thing that they're really, really not. But, as I mentioned earlier, there are some guys who are coming to kill Nick, and they also happen to be the same guys that Nick is contracted to kill by the guy on the motorcycle. He sets it up so it looks like he is having happy fun times with angel prostitute lady, but it's really prawn dude out of his suit now, sets it up for all these three guys to get mowed down, shoots all of them but one, all right? These mafia bros that we got established earlier in the episode had been talking about how they don't like the Nick guy and how they want to get rid of him. And so they've set this thing up, but in the process of that, we've also seen one of their more dignified mafia bros come back from the funeral of his uncle, and he's clearly shaken up. And he's the last one that Nick leaves alive, and he has these flashbacks to, like, I don't know, it's something horrifying for him. We don't see enough in detail to really get what has horrified him, but he starts talking about this password, and he's bargaining for his life, and it's a great scene because Nick's just like, this is so far above my pay grade. I just want the money, okay? I don't need your password. And he shoots him out the window. But before the guy can die, Nick has a heart attack as he's walking out on the street. And this guy whispers in his ear this password. I don't fully understand what's going on here, but he also mentions to Nick that in the process of hearing this password, that he's heard this terrible secret that the world is being run by demons that look like people, which sounds like a fun conspiracy theory. I'm guessing, based on the tenor of the show, I have not seen exact evidence of this, all right? But I'm thinking there's a good chance that that's probably accurate, okay? We're probably going to get to see people who are like demon things somehow. But Nick has a heart attack, which I love. I love this scene as he's getting shot where he's like, yeah, I know I've gotten shot, but really the thing that's about to kick me in the balls is a heart attack, guys. And especially because you don't get a lot of old action heroes, and Nick is very much, maybe not a hero, very much action-y. And he ends up going to the hospital, or at least going toward the hospital. And as he's in the ambulance, we've cut away occasionally to the place where Haley's box was being kept. And from point of view at this point early on in the show, we see somebody flying through the city looking for Nick. And this thing finds Nick. And when you know it, if you've seen any of the trailers or the promos, or even the picture of the show, you know what this thing is going to be. It's the blue unicorn, Happy. It's Kaylee's imaginary friend, and he is there to get Nick to help Kaylee out. And at this point in the show, it seems like a really weird choice for him. Like, why did this tiny little magical creature that may or may not exist come to Nick specifically to ask for help? Surely there must be somebody else, somebody better equipped, or less having a heart attack right now, or fewer drinks per day in their system kind of thing. Like, Nick is decent at the violent stuff, but Happy and Nick are a weird combo. And early on, I was like, why is this weird unicorn asking this guy for help? We find out why, but I'll get to that in a minute. We get a little bit more backstory on these passwords, because one of the cops that came to investigate the scene where Nick had fallen from the heart attack and where he'd mowed down all those other guys who wanted to kill him was a female cop who apparently knows Nick. We get a little bit of exposition from her that he used to be a great cop on the force. We heard a little bit of that from the hooker as well, where she said, hey, you told me once to go straighten up my life. It was a real inspiration, which is a great moment where he's like just looking at her like clearly she hasn't done anything with her life. And he's like, yeah, I could tell. But she ends up on the phone with one of the mob bosses saying, hey, your password's in the wild. The boy that got shot, he apparently had it. He don't have it no more because he dead. And I've got intel that he might have passed it on to this Nick character. We're going to get it out of him. And the mob boss apparently needs this password for something. Again, this is relatively nebulous. I can't tell if he's one of these demons in human skin that's supposed to be running the city. He sure seems pretty demonic because he keeps threatening his kid that he's going to throw his dog in the fire because that he's apparently already done that 3 times this year. And the wife in the situation, even like, I get that maybe she's some kind of battered wife and like she's afraid of him, but even more than that, it seems to have gone beyond like what a normal situation would be for something like this. He seems like something really evil. Either a real bad dude or a demon dude who's also real bad. But he lets the cop go and try to get this password out of Nick. She does. He makes it to the hospital, right? He's passed out and stuff a couple times because he's had a heart attack. And the upshot kind of is eventually we get to Nick busting out of the hospital. He doesn't tell the mob goons what the password is. There's a great sort of reminiscent of the Casino Royale interrogation scene in James Bond, only not without all the ball jokes, but sort of where he's mocking the torturer and stuff and gets the upper hand. And in this scene, more than anything, you really, really get the sense that Nick is just like a beast of a man as a fighter. And he's dealing with Happy this whole time, trying to parse out what's going on. There's one bit that was interesting. Happy has to have a window open for him to get into the hospital, or it seems that way anyway, because he doesn't come in until Nick has the lady cop open the window, and that's when Happy pops in. He's like, oh, it's cold out there. It doesn't make sense for Happy to have like corporeal physical limitations like that, but I don't know what the rules are yet. It's just something that I noticed. But Nick and Happy are fighting these guys off, and at some point Nick realizes that Happy is not him. Okay, up until this point he's been laboring on a delusion that Happy was some kind of crazy schizoid manifestation of his own mind. And Happy gives him information that turns out to be true that he could not have possibly known himself about how many people were coming down the hall. And Nick starts to realize, oh, this is a real thing. I don't know what this is. It's some kind of weird unicorn thing, but it's not. He's processing all of this, and again, bloody fight. Like, really, I cannot. It's almost unrealistic, although a lot of stuff in this show seems to be unrealistic so far, that he should be able to do any of this, but he, like, just is a beast to these guys. Just rips up, he's beating up all the people. And as we get to the end of the show, right, as Nick is trying to escape and running out and sort of trying to get his bearings on what is going on and what this password is going to mean for him and what this weird unicorn thing is, Happy tells him why he picked him. He says, listen, you're Haley's dad, and you're the only hope that she has. And we've seen that, okay? We know that the regular channels are not going to work because there's a scene earlier in the show where Haley's mom goes to the police and they're not good at human. Okay, they're just like the worst. They can't remember Haley's name. The guy's barely taking notes. Like he's so convinced that nothing is gonna, like the cop who's supposed to be helping out is so convinced that nothing is going to happen and this little girl is going to be found dead, hands the mother like grief counseling services card. That's the best he can do to help her is say, yeah, she's probably dead. You might want to get some help here. It's not great. Not a great time for that mom or for Haley. And it really interesting to have Nick put in the situation because it's not just he's being dragged along by this unicorn now. I think I hope anyway, what we're going to find out is that way buried under all this crust and nastiness of what Nick has become as this hitman detective type guy is a heart that used to beat, that used to care, that used to love, and probably saw at least some of the I'm assuming that maybe he didn't see like actual demon things, okay? Now, that could happen. We'll have to keep watching. But just got so disillusioned with what the world was around him that he essentially just gave up and said, I've had too much. Like, I'm going on my own. It doesn't matter anymore. Nobody's making a difference. Because if this guy used to be a good cop, I mean, granted, you don't have to do much to be a father of somebody, right? Like, that's just a sperm donor relationship at worst. But still, based on what we've heard of him, it seems like he probably had a real relationship with this woman at some point. He probably didn't know that he had a daughter. Almost certainly didn't know that he had a daughter. And now he's being thrust back into the world. He's being forced to confront what he has turned his back on. He thought he could just get away, right? This is the sense I'm getting. Again, we'll have to keep watching and seeing. But this seems like a guy who thought that, screw it, like the world is rotten all the way through. I'm not going to fix it. It's not going to unrot for me. And why not just join in? I'm not hurting anybody. I mean, I am hurting people, but it's not hurting me to hurt them. So cool. I can just give up on all this making a better world thing. And if he finds out he has a daughter, if this guy finds out that he has a daughter, what does that mean? What does that do to him? And especially seeing Happy as a manifestation of this daughter's hopes and ideals, right? Not just in the sort of cutesy way where he doesn't swear and stuff, but the fact that he makes a beeline straight for the daddy that she apparently knows that she has, even if he doesn't know about her, and has all this hope in him and idealizes him and says, oh, wow, you're really going to help us out. You need to help Haley. That gives you a sense of who she is and where she's at. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how all that plays out. I hope you guys are too. I really enjoyed this first episode. I believe I'm going to continue covering this one for the rest of the season, unless it gets sour on me like Z Nation did. Z Nation still hasn't gotten better, guys. I don't know if you watch my Z Nation recaps. You're like, Albert's back doing recaps. Z Nation, still an entire season of filler. Anyway, that'll do it for this week. If you liked this episode, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Like it. Subscribe to the channel because we will be continuing on, I hope. And I'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Happy Recap. Take care, y'all.